Welcome back to Wake Up America. I'm Rachel Roller. Yesterday marked the deadliest day of the week-long conflict in the Middle East as Israel bombed the House of Hamas Gaza leader, and Hamas launched more than 100 rockets toward Israel. Joining us now from Tel Aviv, Israel, contributing correspondent from Axios is Barak Ravid. Ravid, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about the latest on the ground there in Tel Aviv?
Well, Tel Aviv in the last 24 hours was relatively calm. Hamas fired no rockets to the center of Israel in the last 24 hours, but in southern Israel, a lot of rocket attacks along the border with Gaza in southern cities like Ashdod and Ashkelon and Sderot and other towns and villages in southern Israel. At the same time, the Israeli military continues its airstrikes against a target in Gaza. This morning, a very senior Islamic Jihad commander was killed in an Israeli airstrike in Gaza, the main commander in the northern Gaza Strip. It's a big blow for the Islamic Jihad. The IDF also managed to prevent an attack by Hamas using a small underwater vehicle that was supposed to detonate itself near an Israeli military ship. This attack was also prevented, but the fighting is ongoing. The latest numbers of casualties in Gaza, I think we are close to 200 people who were killed since the beginning of this recent crisis. Among them, almost 100 women and children, close to 1,500 people wounded. This is the death toll, according to the Gaza Ministry of Health, in like an hour ago.
Just so disturbing there. Barak, let me ask you, over the weekend, Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz said that Israel has no interest in escalation, but is ready for any scenario. However, as you're pointing out, 2 recent Israeli airstrikes in Gaza killed at least 40 Palestinians, including 8 children, and hurting 50 others. Does that not sound like escalation, or can you elaborate on that at all?
Well, I think that on Saturday, there was a tipping point in the fighting, because until Saturday, Israel almost, I'm not saying that completely not, but almost did not hit civilians in Gaza. But on Saturday, 2 things happened. First, an Israeli airstrike killed a Palestinian family, 2 women and 8 children in one bombing, a very tragic incident. Several hours later, Israel bombed the high-rise building in Gaza that housed the offices of the Associated Press, Al Jazeera, several other media outlets. Those 2 incidents, I think, changed the trend when it comes to both public opinion and how the media around the world sees this operation, and a lot of governments around the world. And I think that since Saturday, we are in a countdown towards the end of this operation. And I think that even the Israeli government understands that militarily, we basically achieved most of our targets. But right now, everything that happened is that Israel is losing its international backing and legitimacy, and it's hitting more and more civilians. And I hear from more and more Israeli national security officials who say we need to start ending this operation.
Well, speaking of civilians and civilian population, something else getting a lot of attention, Israel Defense Forces releasing photos allegedly showing Hamas rocket installations and tunnel entrances placed close to civilian hospitals and schools. We're showing those images now, claiming that Hamas deliberately is placing the military targets within the civilian population, exposing so many people to danger. What have you heard about that?
Oh, definitely. This is something that Hamas has been doing for more than a decade now. First, you have to understand the Gaza Strip is an extremely small and dense area. Okay, there is almost no possibility if you're a terrorist organization and your basic assumption is that you want to hide within a civilian population to make it harder for Israel to hit you. But in Gaza, it is very easy to do because there is almost no possibility of operating military infrastructure in an area that is not near civilian population. So for Hamas, it's part of its MO. It's embedded within the population its whole military infrastructure is underground. So basically, you have a residential building, but underground, you have military headquarters, you have military tunnels for defense and attack, you have rockets. This is really part of Hamas and the other terror organizations in Gaza MO.
Right. Now, let me ask you real quickly. Just yesterday on CBS this morning, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that he doesn't see an immediate end to this conflict. What kind of messaging do you think that that sends to people living in fear, understandably?
First, I got to tell you, I don't think that Netanyahu's comment was totally accurate. Meaning the Israeli government wants to at least send the message to Hamas and to other organizations in Gaza that it is not in a rush for a ceasefire, so that the pressure on them will mount. But again, I think that we are really at the early stages of ceasefire talks. Yesterday, the UN envoy, Tor Wensland, who's running the ceasefire talks, again spoke to Israeli and Hamas officials, to the Egyptians. The Egyptians are highly involved. And I think that anytime in Gaza, when you start talking about a ceasefire, there's this breaking distance that it's not like you start talking about ceasefire and it happens right away. It takes sometimes 4, sometimes 5 days between the point that you start talking about a ceasefire and that it's actually implemented. So I think that we're in the very preliminary stages, and more or less, at least my assessment is that towards Wednesday, Thursday, Friday will be more or less we're very likely to be in a ceasefire until then.
Okay, well, we'll definitely be keeping an eye on things as they develop. Barak Ravid, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.